So today we're going to be talking about The Bonehunters by Steven Erikson. This is book 6 in the Malazan series. This is going to be a spoiler-filled video, but I did have a spoiler-free vlog clip where I gave overall thoughts about the series. I'll link that if you want it, but here's the spoilers. And I thought for this video, for this book, because this is a book of high action, constant movement, oh my goodness, this book was a ride, because there's so much to this book. I thought that I would as a nod to Mike, I'd start the video off the way he does, with reading a quote from the book that was very impactful to me. It is a fact that men don't need words, but women do. We have penises after all. Who needs words when you have a penis? Women, on the other hand, have 2 breasts, which invites conversation, just as a good behind presents perfect punctuation. What's wrong with the world? You ask a man and he says, don't ask. You ask a woman and you'll be dead before she's finished. That was, of course, a quote from the legend Iskarl Pust, who, I don't know if I say his name right, who has so many good quotes throughout this book. He truly is a fool, and I love him. I love him so dearly. Him and his wife. I love them so dearly. This is a book that is so intense. There's so much going on in this book. It's a non-stop ride. And I love that throughout all of the action and the character moments, the tragedy, the hope within the tragedy, throughout all the Malazan things, there's always a lot of humor as well, which we'll also talk about in this video. So coming to the end of The Bonehunters, Chapter 7. Okay, actually, let me start off by saying this. As I was writing up my notes for this video, I realized that this video is probably going to be a review for Chapter 7 with some mentioning of other highlights afterwards. But this is a video for Chapter 7 because Chapter 7, Yi-Gatan, it's the best chapter in all of the 6 Malazan books that I've read. It's the #1 scene that I don't think can be topped for a lot of reasons. So I'm going to spend too much time talking about that and too little time talking about everything else. The rest of it's going to be highlights, like high moments. But that scene really, really affected me. I burst out into tears just typing up my notes for it. And Corey, my husband, who is sitting across the room from me, it was very jarring for him. He was like, what are you doing? What just happened? And I was like, I was just writing about... Okay, anyway. But despite that being the top scene of Malazan for me, and I can't imagine that it could ever be dethroned, still Midnight Tides is my favorite Malazan book as a whole. But The Bonehunters, even with Midnight Tides still edging it out a little bit, The Bonehunters is kind of, in a lot of ways, the perfect book. It has all the Malazan things. It has the battles, it has the character moments, it has the scenes with the gods and the wider scale stuff happening and the smaller scale tragedies and human moments within the tragedies. And it also has that effect of, as a Malazan reader, if you've read 5 books that have all been their individual storylines that are all excellent on their own, this is them coming together. This is the payoff. This is most everybody coming together and sprinting forward, which makes it very daunting and overwhelming because there's a lot of characters to keep track of. Oh my goodness. But it also makes it so exciting because I don't know, I said it in a vlog clip, but I almost have gotten used to each Malazan book feeling like its own standalone that also has some threads connecting it all, that actually getting to see everyone together and in action is really, really thrilling. So just getting into the highs of the book, I really, really loved seeing the 14th Army interacting, the calm before the storm. I loved the character development that we got from the 14th Army, their camaraderie, the building up of their characters. Bottle is a character that really stood out to me as someone that I just really, really loved. But also the build up to Yi-Gatan, that that claustrophobic feeling that Erickson wrote into it, the suffocation that you could feel along with the characters, the fear, the overwhelming sense of what was going on was all written so well. And I'm really glad that while The Bonehunters was a sprint of a book, I really love that here at the beginning he slowed things down before we got to the first climax of the book and allowed us to have those character moments with the 14th Army before we get to Yucatan. The scene with Leomon and the Queen of Dreams. Oh, so I really liked Leomon in previous books. I trusted him, much like Korab did. I trusted him with my whole heart, even when he was doing weird stuff, like even when he was making the plans, and it's like, what are you doing? You know, I still was just like, well, he knows more than I do, right? So Leomon, he's got this. Much like Korab. And I loved his relationship with Korab. I loved that wholehearted, I'm devoted to you kind of relationship that they had. And when Leomon turned on them, left them all. I mean, he did invite Korab to go with him. And Korab told him, I won't follow you anywhere ever again. I think the line was, I'll have nothing to do with you. And he stays behind to protect, like, I love these characters and the bond that they've built up. I loved the relationship between Leomon and Korab. And while I understand, Leomon is a character where I understand how he came to this conclusion. I understand why this is the decision that he made. But I don't care. I don't care because you left your men behind. You left your men to die. You jumped in that warren. Was it a warren? Was it a whirlwind? You jumped it. You got out. And you left your men to burn. When Leomon lit the flames, when he lit the oil on fire, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I felt so personally betrayed by him and so shocked. And the thing is with Korab, and I felt that betrayal alongside him. I think we can all relate to this feeling of ultimate betrayal. You know, I think most people have had a time in their lives where you trust someone wholly. Like you don't doubt them, you don't doubt the relationship you have with them, be it something familial or friendship or a leadership situation like this or whatever situation it would be for the individual. But we've all had a situation where there's somebody that you trust and you feel so secure in the relationship that you have with them and the dynamic you have with them, and then in an instant that entire worldview is shattered, and in a second you have to reevaluate so many things. And we go through that world-shattering moment with Korab on multiple levels, on his leader that he trusted to the point of, I don't even have to question you. You know more than me, so I follow you. You know, that life devotion. I think Leomon even said something along the lines of, your devotion to me is going to be tested. Like, Leomon knew. He knew from the beginning what he was going to do. And do you think that he thought that Korab, when he extended the invitation to Korab, you can come with me, you can escape, do you think that he thought he would do it? Because Korab, his loyalty to Leomon was strong, but his loyalty to his men and to what he believed in, do you think he thought that he was going to be chosen over them? Anyway, Leomon made his choice. He broke that friendship. He broke that trust. He broke that worldview. He broke those people. He left them to die. And Korab not only had his worldview shattered of this leader that he trusted and that he devoted his life to, but he also had his worldview shattered with the Malazans, this group of people that he had these ideals about, that they were less than human, that they were these disgusting baby eaters, that he had these prejudices and these ideas about them. And in the same moment that this leader that he trusted with his life surrendered his life, surrendered his men's lives for his own. He then also sees the Malazans as humans and as individuals, and finds out that the way he viewed them wasn't true either. And the fact that Karab, in the midst of all this, that he went back for his people, that he stayed with his people, that he rallied them. They went into the city. They fought alongside people that they hated. The fact that Karab picked up Fiddler and carried him, like when they go into the city, I realize that it's that first man in, last man out kind of mentality. But it was so, I was so moved by Karab's, first of all, his world shattering, because man, can I relate? But then also in that, to not have time for self-reflection, to not have time for re-evaluating his view of the Malazans, but instead to pick one up and put him on his back. Like, this scene for Karab made him, this is halfway through the book, and it made it so that there was no chance for anyone else in the book to surpass him as a character, maybe in this series. I was so moved by his leadership, by his fast thinking, and by his bravery and devotion. And it's also the fact that Leomon left the children behind too. He left them to die too. And it's like, just what a despicable human. I hate him so much. And okay, so something that I notice about Erikson, a pattern that he does, is in his most intense moments, in his most devastating scenes, he oftentimes has children at the center of that devastation. He oftentimes places children right in the center of that impact of what has just been done. And I think that it's really interesting how he does that, because I think he puts a big emphasis on, obviously Erikson puts a big emphasis on the cost of war, the cost of the acts that humanity is capable of doing, and how that the cost of that on the world, the cost of that on the individual, and how it changes them and shapes them, sometimes in moments like Karab where he rises up, and sometimes in instances with others where they descend down. But he also puts a big emphasis on women, on motherhood, and the pain and the difficulties that come specifically to them in these horrible situations, and how more complicated their lives can become. But also, even more so, he puts a huge emphasis on children. He puts such a big emphasis on the pain and suffering that children experience in these devastating times, as well as a really big emphasis on loss of innocence, which affects the characters strongly, affects me strongly, but I also feel like I can feel kind of the suffering that Erikson feels when he writes these scenes. I feel like I can feel his heart break for the innocence lost of children in times of suffering. I think there's an intentionality in putting children in the center of suffering over and over and over again in his books. And to me, he's trying to say something about how great that cost is on these innocent lives. And I appreciate that. Hate it, but I appreciate it. Also, there was a scene, and I don't remember who said it. I don't remember who said it, but there was a quote in the book where somebody said something along the lines of, "It's a great character flaw of mine that I can see a situation from many different angles, and because of that, I'm able to justify or sympathize with great acts of evil." And he's saying that he can see great acts of evil, and he can sympathize, or he can understand how they would justify it because he sees it from their angle. But anyway, he follows that up with saying, "But when I view the bones of a child, I can't get past that. I can't see the other side of that kind of evil." And I think that kind of solidifies what I'm seeing in Erikson's own writing, that, you know, Erikson does a really good job of viewing a lot of really atrocious acts in history and Malazan history and parallels in our own history, viewing it from a lot of different angles. You can even see that in the prologue. Erikson does a good job of taking something and showing the tragedy of it, as well as what other angles that you can look at it from. And he does that with people's lives. He does that with situations. He does that in so many realms. And I appreciate that in Erikson's work, he kind of has a hard line with children, as far as I can tell, where he kind of, in the midst of tragedy, he's like, yeah, but we can't really do much for the suffering and the innocence lost with kids, can we? And that also, now I'm just jumping all over the place, and I'm sorry about that, but also with Sin, who's a high mage and who's a really fascinating character, but also I just feel like so much innocence is lost with her character too, and there's so many very, very, very uncomfortable scenes around Sin, and I don't really know how to process her character and some of those scenes around what goes on with her, and her relationship with another character whose name I can't think of off the top of my head right now, but there's a lot of very, very, very uncomfortable scenes around her, and I don't yet know how to process them. I'm kind of holding back judgment until I read more, because I'm sure that's going to be further explored, but I also just look at her character and kind of weep, because I'm just like, look at that innocence lost, you know? But yeah, the scene just really affected me. The Yigatan, everything, the betrayal, the characters that rose up and went in, and just really, really affected me. And I think that it's one of the greatest scenes that I've ever read. I'm sorry, I've been like on the verge of tears throughout talking about this entire section of the video. I'll get it together. But yeah, that scene just really, really affected me on a lot of levels. Like, I think just storytelling wise, it was phenomenal, but also character wise. And then the way that, I don't know, it just very personally affected me too. So really liked it. It was really good. Okay, let's move on. So let's talk about some of Erikson's character work, because Faradan, Captain Faradan. I'm so constantly impressed by Erikson, the way he will change characters. Sometimes it's in their progress and their character arcs. You go through books with them and you see them change, sometimes in great ways, sometimes in horrible ways. And you go through this journey with them, and because you've walked through life with them and you've seen them be shaped, your perspective on them is also shaped. But then there's other characters that are introduced in some way, and then as you know them more, your view of them shapes as well. I think Karsa is a really good example of that, but in this book, I would also like to point out Faradan. I'm sorry, I really struggle with pronouncing these names. Anyway, Faradan, who we are introduced to by her stepping on Joyful Union, which was just so atrocious. And I feel like any reader will read that scene and be like, what did you just do? I hate you. I hate you. How dare you? Are you kidding me right now? But then you get to know Faradan better, and she's kind of the hero of the story, or one of the heroes of the story. She's a hugely important character, and she gets a lot of great scenes. She's very important to the story, and it's just really funny to me because at this point in my Malazan reading, I have learn to just hold on to my expectations of these characters very loosely, because I know they're going to change, whether it be because of an arc that they go through or because they're introduced in some way, and they will be given more depth as we know them more. Leomon is a great example of a character that I had some opinions on, and then in one scene, I have changed so much of how I think of him. But then I also brought up Karsa. I think Felisin the Younger. No, not younger. Felisin, the original, is another character that I went through such a journey with her. Ooh, wow. Okay. Sorry. This series gets a lot of emotions out of me. I'll keep it together, I promise. Another great scene. Another great scene is when the Bonehunters are reunited with the 14th Army. Oh my goodness, the emotions And Fiddler playing his song as the backdrop of this sudden war that happens. Again, I'm jumping around, I realize that. But Fiddler playing his song in the midst of this war that happens, and how he loses hope, and then he changes his tune, and it's just like, oh my goodness, one of the greatest scenes again of the book, of a book full of so many great scenes. One of the greatest scenes really, really hit me hard and made Fiddler just elevated that much more. Oh gosh. Okay. Anyway, we also had a lot of deaths. We lost, Faith, was it that we lost during the Yigatan scene? Truth. It was Truth. Truth we lost at the end, or not at the end, in the beginning when Leomon bails. We lost Pearl. Wow. That scene when Lascara has to kill her. Oh my goodness! Dujek One Arm, who is one of the most powerful, important, like he's a big deal character, and he dies off page. and many more. I'm sure I'm forgetting some things, but death means something different in Malazan. It looks a different kind of way. So who knows what's to come with any of this, but really, really, it's just so many great scenes. Another scene that was really intense for me was so Cutter is now the bodyguard of Felison the Younger, and Grey Frog is there, and several other characters are there. That scene, I think if I'm remembering it correctly, I think the scene was when Grey Frog wakes up in a dead of sleep. He wakes up and he's so afraid. He's like, doom is coming. Something horrible is coming to us. And I'm pretty sure it's Cutter that responds to this by being like, get up, get our things, get out. Like, he freaks out because someone like Grey Frog is so fearful. And then I think it's a group of rebels that comes in and basically just slaughters them. I mean, intestines are spilled out, people are being cut to pieces. It was such a brutal scene. And this is the scene where Felison the Younger is kidnapped and taken away. She becomes the Shaik Reborn. Oh my goodness. But that scene, it happened so rapidly, and I really felt the fear coming through the pages in that scene when people were responding to the fear that Grey Frog was feeling. And then they're just massacred. Oh my goodness. Anyway, Felison the Younger is Shaik Reborn. Again. Not again, but Felison was, and now it's Felison the Younger, which is just... This is interesting. I'm very, very curious to see where this all goes, where Erikson takes this, but there is definitely a circular aspect to this where, Felison is the one that kind of unleashed the plague. If I'm remembering that correctly, you can correct me because I am reading these books over a large span of time. But Felison is the one that kind of unleashed all of this horrible destruction that's come on them. And it is really interesting to see Felison open up this thing to the world, and then Felison the Younger is the one that's going to bring it back around. I really like that sort of completion arc that Erikson likes to sneak all over his books. Absolar is another star of this book, but you know who else are stars in this book? Telerost and Curdle. I talked about them too much during the reading vlogs. If you keep up with my reading vlogs, I talked about them too much. They're so funny. I love how stupid they are. I love how chattery they are. I love how weird they are in every scene when they're just like snipping at each other and going back and forth and like chattering about nonsense. And then somebody will just walk away and they're like, oh no, they're not taking us seriously anymore because we're constantly chattering. We have to stop chattering. Yeah, we have to stop chattering. Let's stop chattering now. Oh, remember that one thing? Like, they're such forces of chaos, and I love their presence in the story. And then whenever they turn into dragons, are you kidding me? Like, I love these characters. And Absolar too had so many great scenes in this book. She had so much great character development and so many really emotional scenes. I feel like she's becoming more and more human as I go through these books. That scene where she finds out that that Cutter is probably dead, and she just starts crying, like, oh gosh, that scene really affected me. Her relationship with Coltane in this book is phenomenal. The fact that she has dreams, memories, and she can pull on those. It's like, it's just so funny because Absolar is a character, much like I was talking about before, where you change how you think about these characters so much. She is a character that is increasingly becoming more and more human to me as the stories go on, whereas Shadow Throne is doing the opposite. He's going in the opposite direction. He's becoming more maniacal, more inhuman, more conniving, and it's just wild to see, to remember these impressions that I had of these characters and now how I view them so differently. Oh, and the scene with Absolar in the ship speaking with Squirt was the name, I think, where they pretended not to know each other just so they could have just a moment of humanity, just a moment to breathe, was so good. There were so many good Absolar scenes in this book. Karsa is another character that got a lot of development in this book. He's been a very inward-facing character, largely because of how he was raised, how he was brought up, but he's really starting to see the world more. He's starting to understand more of how the rest of the world operates, and it's changing his worldview, much like, that's a real theme. Man, that's a real theme in this book, is characters' entire worldview shifting, them seeing the world in a certain kind of way and being confronted with other realities of the world and having to rethink so much and shift and change along with those worldviews changing with them. Like, oh man, that's brought up in so many different ways in this book. So Karsa, he's seeing more of the world, he's seeing more of people, and he's changing so much with that. He's really starting to become, he's learning a lot more about himself and about other people in the world, and I very much like it. Some really great scenes with him. I loved when he fought a short tail. When he fought a short tail with his bare hands, and he comes out of it going, it's nothing. Like, what? Ah! And that scene when he says, I'm done speaking, witness. Like, Karsa! Iskarl Pust got the quote at the beginning of the video because he should. Him and his wife are such a force of chaos. Do you remember that scene where she's performing the healing ritual on... Shucks, I've forgotten. Hold on. I remember messaging Joanna about it, and I know I said names in that message. So let me see if I can dig through our chat together and find it. Okay, when Moripa, his wife, is doing the healing ritual on Mappo, and she's like peeing on rocks and ripping her hair out and using it as part of the ritual and just acting like a force of chaos like she is. And then she starts speaking another language, and he's talking about how women have a secret language just between them, and men can't understand it. So men now have a secret language, and it's gibberish, but they don't understand each other. It's nothing. It's nonsense. But like, women can't understand it. So like, hey, we're even. There's some nonsense like that. He's so funny. And he's so he's one of those characters where it's like, we're all laughing at you, not with you. But I love it. I love their relationship and how very messed up it is. I love how ridiculous their characters are. They constantly have me laughing. These two are wild, and I love them. They remind me a little bit of like a more toxic version of Magic Max and his wife from The Princess Bride. Do you remember when he's being ridiculous and conniving and gritty and gross, and he's like trying to undercut them, and he's like, no, he didn't say true love, he said to blave, and which obviously means to bluff, and so like he just wants to gamble, and he's not a good guy, and I don't need to bring him back. And then she come running in, and she's like, liar, and he's like, get away from me, you witch, that kind of like, I feel like that's them, just like way more toxic. Because this girl Pust is also, he's powerful, like he's a force to be reckoned with, he's conniving, he's like constantly trying to just ruin everybody's life, and I don't know, I just really like them. Ganos Perrin is another character that has also changed a lot in this book. He went from rejecting his fate of being master of the deck, and now he's accepted his role as the High Fist, and I'm really excited to see what Erikson does with his character. I love to see how much he's grown and changed. I mean, I don't know who else could have had this role, but I am really curious to see how he's going to do in this role. And then the final thing that I'll briefly mention in this very long video is the battle for the first throne. Whoa. It's the scene where Ikariam goes after Troll, who I love, so how dare you? He goes after Troll and he melts away Onrath. He melts him into the first throne. And then his eye is peeking out, just like watching. What? What just happened? So we have the outrage that Troll is being attacked right now and his life is in danger. And then we have this grotesque, horrifying, cool, awesome scene of him being melted into the throne. And then we have Quick Ben coming out to pay off his debts, and he's nearly killed. And the emotional devastation of the fact that Ikariam forgot about Mappo, just completely forgot him, everything they've been through, like, oh, that scene killed me. And all the aftermath as Ikariam travels to Shadow Throne and like everything that comes with that as well. I just, man, this book had so many high and low, like, but not bad low, but like tragic, emotional, intense, exciting, hilarious. Like, it had it all. And that's what I was trying to articulate in the beginning, is like, this is a book that really just did everything that is great about Malazan. It did it all. And I loved it. I loved it so much. Like, Midnight Tides is still my number one, but wow, the Bonehunters was a ride. Wow. Yeah. Really liked it. So I know I missed some stuff. I know that there are probably things that you would love to have talked about that I skipped over, so feel free to talk about more things in the comments, elaborate on more things, give me your opinion on Sin. I don't know what to do with what happened with Sin in this book. Give me your opinions on Korab and Leomon. Do that one. Tell me about, that's what I care about. Tell me your opinions on Korab and Leomon, because I have so many. Anyway, that is my chaotic review of a chaotic book, The Bonehunters. Let me know what you think of it, how you like this book, what are your favorite parts, who are your favorite characters in this one. I post videos every Tuesday and Thursday on this channel, Mondays and Fridays on my other channel, which is always linked in the description. I'll see you again soon. Bye.